Hey everyone, so you're wondering where my friend Mike Lindell is? Well, guess what? He was actually creating the My Slipper. It's like walking on clouds, right? Don't forget to use the promo code Carter, Carter, and you will receive 40% off of your My Slippers. Your whole family's going to love it.
This episode of the Sara Carter Podcast is sponsored by the Tunnel to Towers Foundation. Never forget, join the Tunnel to Towers Foundation on its mission to do good in honor of America's heroes. Donate $11 a month at t2t.org. That's T2T.org.
Such a great organization. I know I say that over and over again. Please consider donating. Go out there and donate to T2T. Look, today is going to be a really important show, and I'm glad I am wide awake to share all of my adventures in Guatemala with you. I just got back from Guatemala City, as well as I had an opportunity to go up into the mountains a couple hours outside of Guatemala City to San Rafael. It's a village up in the area of Guatemala City that is basically almost like a ghost town now, because so many people have fled and are coming to the United States. And I'm going to talk to you about that, but I'm going to talk to you about the bigger implications of migration for our entire Western Hemisphere. It's something that no one's thinking about right now, folks. It's about the fact that our terrible policies coming out of the Biden administration, what we are seeing down at the border, this border crisis that is so out of control. Not only are we seeing a humanitarian crisis, as well as a national security crisis, but we are seeing a crisis that is going to permanently damage our security in the Western Hemisphere if we don't change course, and I mean ASAP. And I am talking about our adversaries in China and in Russia, the CCP and the Russians, and especially the Chinese Communist Party. They have taken advantage. I know, you're going to say, Sarah, where did this come from? I'm going to explain to you how and why during this monologue, how dangerous this is and what we are doing and what we are not doing about it. So you gotta listen to this podcast. And also, we have a great guest. We have Congressman Tiffany. He is on the show with me today, and he is going to take you. I'm going to take you to Guatemala, and he is going to take you into the Darien Gap. He has just returned from the Darien Gap in Panama, and it is probably one of the most dangerous places in the world. There are people traversing that jungle, some of them not making it. And he was there with our good friend Michael Yon, who is a war correspondent and journalist that I have so much respect for, as well as Chuck Holton, who was with him, and another group of people. I'm going to go through everything with him. Do not miss this podcast. You are going to learn so much from all of these adventures today. But don't forget, you can get all the links to all the stories that we have, all of our breaking stories at saracarter.com. That's saracarter.com. And while you're there, guys, don't forget to sign up for our email list. All right. You need to sign up for our email list so you do not get shadow banned. All right. The problem is that anytime we have stories or something coming out, we try to put it on Twitter. We get it out on Facebook. There is a chance that Facebook or Twitter will hide that story from you. Not if you sign up for our email list. You'll love it. We'll get everything out to you. I will not inundate you with emails, but I will get the most important stories right into your email box and give you, I guess, the latest and the greatest coming out of Washington, D.C. and from around the world. All right. AMAC. I got to tell you, it is the best organization. This is an organization. It's the Association of Mature American Citizens that does not forget about you and your freedom and your liberty. They're fighting the good fight against reckless government spending and the ever-expanding scope of the federal government. By joining AMAC, you're taking the first steps to saving the America you love. Isn't that what you want to do? That's what I want to do. And that's why I have this podcast. And that's why I'm so grateful for them being a sponsor of this podcast, because they really, really believe in freedom. They really believe in our nation. AMAC offers an alternative to just about every benefit that AARP offers, but without the liberal agenda. Right now, we're actively fighting against dangerous legislation. AMAC is doing that. And I hope that you will too. I encourage you to join today at amac.us/Carter. That's amac.us/Carter, Carter. The benefits of membership are great, but the cause is even greater. Join today at amac.us/Carter. Let's just jump right into it. I have been to Guatemala now. This is my 4th trip. I was just there. I flew in yesterday. I'm still feeling pretty tired from all of the traveling. I was in the Rio Grande last week. I don't know if all of you remember that, but I was out there along the Rio Grande and I was doing very late night reporting so that I would be there when people were crossing. And it was stunning to me to see boat after boatload after boatload, I could say raft load, of people coming into the country and literally being handed off by a coyote, being taken by a coyote, those are the smugglers, and basically handed to our National Guard and Border Patrol. And then they were unloaded off the rafts, put on the riverside, on the riverbanks, processed by Border Patrol and taken in. It's incredible. It's an incredible thing to see. You almost have to be there to believe it. And this was boatload after boatload. Here's a guy, a smuggler, literally breaking the law, smuggling children and women and men into the United States of America and just hand delivering them. So what's going on here? Why are we doing this? And why is this policy so bent up and backwards that it is completely putting our nation at risk? Of course, the people that are being smuggled are citizens in our country, and it violates everything that we stand for. This isn't about liberty and freedom. You would think, bring us your poor, bring us your hungry. Yes, but bring them the right way. Not with evil smugglers, not with people that are intent on trafficking human beings, not with people that abuse, kill, rape, and maim people on their way into this country. This policy basically fills their pocketbooks. But I want you to think about something else. And it's something that I talked about at the very top of the show. What do you think our adversaries are doing with this information, with this crisis? And I'm talking about Russia, and I'm specifically also talking about the Chinese Communist Party. Oh, they are watching this very carefully. They're watching the Biden administration overturn every single executive order that saved this nation from a crisis on the border. They watch them stop building the wall. They watch them overturn the migration policy set in place by President Trump that would require people to apply in the country in which they are at for citizenship into the United States. They are watching all of this. Why? Because specifically China, Russia's already had its talons into Latin America and South America for some time. So has Iran. But China sees the prospect of the future in Latin America and in South America. And we're watching governments in those regions, as we've seen in the past, but even more so now, shift to the left. We've seen that in Bolivia. We're seeing that right now in Argentina. We're seeing it in places like Nicaragua. We are seeing the left move in, and I'm talking the communist left. And we are watching China saying, well, look, if the United States isn't going to be there for you, we're going to be there for you. You know, during COVID-19 in Latin America, China basically put its focus on the entire region. I know it's like hard for people to understand this, but they really did. They were looking at beef in Uruguay. They were looking at copper in Chile, oil in Colombia, soy in Brazil. They thought about what can we do for all of these countries that would make them more susceptible to us and to our government, and therefore against the U.S. When I was in Guatemala, I can't tell you how many times, and I was there actually 3 times in 2019, 18 through 19, and then I went back just, like I said, I just got back. I just landed yesterday, and I can't tell you how many times I heard government officials speak about the CCP. CCP is putting in infrastructure. The CCP is offering Guatemala this, Guatemala that. The Guatemalan president, who I spoke with is saying, look, we want a relationship with the United States of America. We want economic trade with the U.S., free trade. We want to build up our nation's relationship with the United States so that it is so strong that none of our people will want to leave Guatemala, that they will want to work here. And we want American companies to want to come here, and we want to export. Why aren't we doing that? Under President Trump, he changed the whole NAFTA agreement with Mexico, remember? And with Canada, came up with this great free trade agreement. Do you know right now, Mexico's unemployment rate is only at 4%? You don't see many, even though Mexico's really full of corruption, we know that, has tons of cartels and narco traffickers. We're not seeing a ton of people crossing from Mexico into the US now. No, we're not. We're seeing a lot of people that they call other than Mexicans, OTMs. That's what the Border Patrol agents call it. People from Guatemala, people from Nicaragua, Honduras, China, other parts of the world, other parts of Africa, Haiti, Cuba. We're not seeing, although some, we're not seeing a lot of Mexicans. And that should be like a light bulb moment for everyone. What we need is strong economic ties. This is my argument. This is what I, talked to a lot of officials about when I was in Guatemala. I said, look, the United States should not give and give up its relationship with its neighbors. We are neighbors, each of us depending on each other. We are in the Western Hemisphere. Think about it. We're the United States of America. We're, right here. We've got Canada above us. We've got all of our Latin American neighbors below, right there to the south. Mexico, Guatemala, Nicaragua, Honduras. Do you really want to see all of those nations, including our South American brothers and sisters, right, turning into communist countries? It's like a game of war, right? Remember, like when you're playing war or something, you're like surrounding your battleships around your enemy. Do we really want our adversaries all over our neighbors? I don't even like to say backyard because that just sounds insulting. And you know what? President Giammattei of Guatemala, he and I actually talked about that. I said, no, you're right. We're neighbors. We are neighbors. We should be partners, and we should look at each other that way. I want you to hear this clip. This is going to be kind of funny because I did the entire interview with President Giammattei in Spanish. Now, although I've been speaking Spanish since I was a young girl, it still isn't my first language. So I lose words sometimes. And I got to tell you, I was so nervous. A little part of me was just going, wow, I hope I get through this interview without saying something really silly or, trashing the Spanish language anymore. I was like, I'm going to Spanglish him. I know it. I know I'm going to do that. But I want you to hear this. I actually made it through pretty okay, but I want you to hear this Q&A with me and the president, and I'll translate for you after. Sat at the presidential palace in Guatemala City, and he pushed back against the Biden administration. He basically said, look, this border crisis is one of your own making. Although we're willing to work with you in resolving the crisis, don't try to put the blame on us. Listen to what he had to say. Porque hay mensajes confundidas del Estados Unidos. La ley cambia mucho y cambió mucho adentro de una administración hasta el otro.
Bueno, yo se lo hice ver que mensajes humanitarios fueron utilizados aquí por los coyotes de una manera totalmente tergiversada.
What I can translate for you in a gist is that basically you have to have a strong message and you have to mean it. He said that, Vice President Kamala Harris's "do not come" is a strong message. But basically he was saying it has to, and I wish I could play the whole interview for you, but I know you don't want to hear the whole interview in Spanish. Some people do. But I'm not going to play it here. We'll post it online, hopefully this week. But one of the things that he was saying is you can't have this mixed messaging. You can't say "do not come" and then have your borders wide open. You can't say, yeah, we want to work with you, Guatemala. Here, take this aid and leave us alone and pass it around to our friends at the NGOs, and not take care of economic and free trade. It's going to rely on all of us. Nations, bilateral, trilateral agreements that will change our hemisphere, that will make us more competitive and stronger against the Chinese and the Russians and our adversaries. Why should we give up on our neighbors? Why should we just pretend to live in a some kind of bubble, like the rest of the world is not going to affect us, like nothing's ever going to happen? Nothing will ever. We already see it happening. We already see it happening. The left, both in the United States, and I'm talking about the communist left and the socialists, and those with leftist tendencies, and the left and the communists and the socialists in Latin America and South America are creepy crawling all over the place. And then we have the Chinese, and the Chinese are doing the same. The Chinese government, the CCP. The CCP has a reason for putting Huawei all over Paraguay, all over South America, all over Latin America. The Huawei 5G, we're going to give it to you for nothing. Why do you think the Chinese are doing that? Why do you think they wanted to set Huawei up in the United States? You think they do it because of the kindness of their hearts or because they just think their product is so amazing? They do it because it extends their power. It extends their reach. Beijing understands this. The Chinese government plays the long game. They expect us to be stupid. They expect us to play a short game. They expect us to see just our hand right in front of our face, but not their plans, for the long haul, not their 20-year or 30 or 50-year plan down the road, right? I mean, the leftist regimes see that. They see what works. China saw that during COVID. China started to push investments in there. Chinese companies invested during 2019, $12.8 billion in Latin America. That was up nearly 17% from 2018. I want you to think about that. Why? They concentrated on regional infrastructure, which is why the president of Guatemala told me, hey, the Chinese came in, they said they want to build a big road. I said, you realize that big road comes with a heavy price, don't you? Oh, yeah. But when you don't have the money and when the United States is looking the other way and wants to give a handout, and by the way, ask Kamala Harris, Vice President Kamala Harris, I'm going to give her due respect. For those of you in the media who are at the White House right now, why don't you ask her exactly where this aid money is going to go? It's 1.8 trillion, and then we dwindle it down. And then I think in Guatemala, we see 22 or 23 million that USAID is going to actually filter out. But where is it going? Do you want to know where it goes? It goes into the pockets of NGOs, of non-governmental organizations. Do you guys not think that those non-governmental organizations are going to put that money in their pockets of their friends? I mean, those are the friends, right? These are people that have vested interests. It's not that they're not doing any good, but there's no real oversight or accountability. So I wonder how much gets put in people's pockets. Does that do anything for the nations we are trying to assist? Does that do anything to stop the border crisis? Does that do anything to put food on the table of a Guatemalan family or a Honduran family? No, it doesn't. It's a Band-Aid in the gaping wound. It's just spilling blood everywhere. I want you to listen right now to this soundbite. This is Kamala Harris. And I'm going to jump to Vice President Kamala Harris because I really, really want to give her an opportunity, right? But we can't after this past week because she kept lying over and over again. And this was another lie about the border. Listen to Kamala Harris. Here she is with NBC News, Lester Holt.
Put a button.
Okay.
Do you have any plans to visit the border?
At some point, we are going to the border. We've been to the border. So this whole thing about the border, we've been to the border. We've been to the border.
You haven't been to the border.
And I haven't been to Europe. And I don't understand the point that you're making. I'm not discounting the importance of the border.
Well, I mentioned it because I know Republicans have certainly come at you on this, but Democratic Congressman Cuellar has a border district has said to you and the president, come. You need to see this.
Listen, I care about what's happening at the border.
Unbelievable. She's never been to the border. She has not been to the border. She is supposedly the border czar, appointed, anointed, and given the job by President Joe Biden or someone. Susan Rice is what I think. She's running everything inside the White House anyways, right? But she has not been down to that border. She does not talk to those children. For crying out loud, she barely stopped in Guatemala, then hopped on a plane and was in Mexico. And she's messed up there. She messed up there on multiple occasions. There was nothing about this that was okay. This is the biggest crisis our nation is facing right now. It really is a crisis. We have drugs coming across that border that are weapons of mass destruction. If you don't think fentanyl is a weapon of mass destruction, you are sadly mistaken. It's not just about addicting, our children and destroying our nation, which is bad enough. But these narcotics are so powerful that they could be used as a weapon against us. We have drug cartels that are literally organizations that are bigger than, think about the money that Microsoft has and Jeff Bezos and Facebook, Mark Zuckerberg. Now imagine how much money these drug cartels have. Do you think these are guys that are just sitting around, wearing mariachi hats and singing songs and drinking tequila? This is some serious business. These people have armies. These people have armies. They are their own shadow government. We have let them amass structures that are worldwide. They launder money. Oh, and by the way, guess what China does for them? China opens the bank account for the drug cartels now. So the drug cartels don't need to move their financial, they can't expose themselves, right? They don't want to expose themselves to the U.S. or to other nations. They're afraid of getting their money taken, right? In some kind of operation. So guess what the Chinese do now? Chinese say, hey, come invest with us. Come on. We'll take it for you. Why are they doing this? We should be very afraid of what is happening right now. Because literally, if we're not paying attention, if we have the wool pulled over our eyes, the Trojan horse, my friends, is already here. The Trojan horse is already here. And it's coming in the form of things that we just aren't seeing. It's kind of like when you lose your keys, right, to the car and you're like looking all over the place. Or like when you have the glasses on top of your head and you're just like, where are my glasses? Like, I really feel that one day something's going to happen and people are going to say like, oh my gosh, that was right there in my face the whole time. And I never saw it. Wake up. We have got to wake up, America. We have got to take this seriously because we're victims. The people who are being trafficked are victims. The only people that are winning here are the bad guys. The only people that are winning this border crisis are the bad guys. And that's a scary thought. That's China. That's the drug cartels, the human traffickers, and the politicians. We're being played as pawns. I'm sorry, but that's a fact. That's a fact. And we need to hold our lawmakers accountable. We really, really do. But it's hard to hold them accountable, even when some people try. I want you to hear Jen Psaki. She is responding after the backlash on Kamala's failure to visit the border. This is an old one. I want you to hear this.
Another on the vice president visiting the border or not visiting the border. Republicans and conservatives are, going crazy on Twitter, sending pictures, sending video of her interview with Lester Holt, saying, I've not been to Europe either. Does the president think there is a scenario in which she should visit the border, and also the mounting criticism from conservatives? Would that ever factor into a decision to send her down there? I mean, don't they have a point that if she has this task in front of her, should she not see the end cause as well as the root cause of migration?
Well, first, as I said to Peter, at some point she may go to the border. I don't have any trips to preview for you or predict or a timeline for that. But what I would reiterate is that her assignment was to work with countries and leaders in the Northern Triangle to address root causes, address corruption, ensure we're working together to address humanitarian concerns. I will say we're not taking advice from former President Trump or most of the Republicans who are criticizing us on this, given they were all sitting there while we created this problem we walked into, both at the border and with the movement of migration that has been growing over the last year.
Don't you love how she said?
We're not taking our guidance and advice from them, but if it is constructive and it moves the ball forward for her to visit the border, she certainly...
You can cut it. Because you know what? It's all yada, yada, yada. But I like how she accidentally said, we created. Right? We created. You're right. You did, Psaki. You guys created it. You created this border crisis. And you may not want to listen to former President Trump, or you may not want to listen to any of the Republicans. But if Kamala Harris actually went down to the border and listened to the stories of the people that are actually being trafficked, she may have a different take on this. And she may start listening to people like me, people like Michael Yon, and without any further ado, Wisconsin Congressman Tom Tiffany, who will be joining me now. He just returned from Panama, where he was with our good friend Michael Yon, who's been on the show multiple times. I know you guys have listened to him before, war correspondent, great man, and Chuck Holton. First of all, Congressman, thank you so much for being a part of the Sarah Carter Show. I'm so thrilled to have you on today because, like I said before we actually came on the show together, we were pre-talk guys for all of you out there. I wanted to let him know how much I appreciated the fact that here we have a congressman, a lawmaker that's willing to take extraordinary steps to get to the truth. And in this day and age, that is almost unheard of. So thank you so much for doing what you did. And I just want to hear, okay, first, to start out, I remember that Nancy Pelosi, House Speaker Pelosi, canceled the trips that Michael had previously tried to plan with Congress. So maybe we'll start there. It's kind of like an adventure from Pelosi to no Pelosi and making your own decisions. Let's hear about it. How did it happen?
Yeah. So really the genesis of it was 2 months ago. I was down at the Rio Grande to see what is basically an invasion of our country that is going on right now, and heard from the Border Patrol. And there were a couple of things that they said that really stuck with me, is they said, this is a pipeline that runs all the way through Central America, Northern South America, Central America, up to the southern border. And they said that, first of all, this is not just about people in Mexico or Central America. And second of all, these people are not all, what would you say, destitute, asylees, that type of people. That there's a lot of people that they're just coming because the border's open. And so I wanted to get more information, and we got connected with Michael Yon and Chuck Holton, and I just decided to go down. They had been viewing some of this and went along with them. And in our entourage, we had about 10 people, went down to Panama, about an hour and a half south of Panama City, down to the Darien Gap, and we got to see what was just truly eye-opening. First of all, it was eye-opening when we went to the Rio Grande to see what was happening 2 months ago. Equally eye-opening to go down to Panama and watch this pipeline that is moving tens of thousands of people from through the Darien Gap on up to the United States.
And it's a harrowing journey. I said this in the beginning of the podcast. The Darien Gap is one of the most, if not the most dangerous place on planet Earth. It is lawless. It is not only dangerous in the sense of criminals and horrific incidences that occur inside this jungle pathway, but there's all kinds of animal life and disease that we are not accustomed to that can actually, especially for children that are traveling through the gap, that could actually present deadly consequences. And this has happened, correct, Congressman? What was it like? First of all, your first impressions, and how did you get there? Were you on a canoe? Did you get in a boat? I want to hear all about each step of the way to get towards the Darien Gap, because I actually plan on going. I wish I could have been with you on that journey. I just got back from Guatemala, but I want to hear how the journey proceeded for you. You get to, Panama City. What happens?
Yeah, we went, we took a couple vans down to a village called Metatee, and that's where we stayed. in a motel there for a couple nights. And so we kind of staged out of there. And it was from there, we took a 4-hour canoe trip, and truly a canoe, about a 25 foot canoe that was just a dugout from probably a balsa tree. And they've got a little 15-horse outboard on it. It took us 4 hours to get from Manatee up the Turquesa River to the village of Bajo Chiquito. And Bajo Chiquito is one of the primary places where the migrants come out of the Darien Gap and they come into that village. The thing that we noticed, at least I noticed, when I first got out of that canoe into Bajo Chiquito was the overwhelming stench. And it was not because of the local people not being clean. There's about 500 wonderful souls that live in that village of Bajo Chiquito, but they have as many as 1,000 people a day that will go through that village. And that's the first place they stop after they get to the Darien Gap. I mean, when they came through the Darien Gap, we saw people coming out of the jungle. They had trench foot. Some people looked like they were about to get gangrene. I saw a woman being wheelbarrowed into a medical facility. We had to, one of our guys that was along with us, he had to piggyback a guy who could not walk anymore into that medical tent that was there. A sole doctor was there from Doctors Without Borders. So they come out and they're just a mess. But what we heard from the villagers is that they would oftentimes see people, infants, children, floating down the river dead. And it's because that 7 to 10 day journey through the Darien Gap in what you so accurately described as one of the most inhospitable places on earth, disease, insects, snakes, and of course you have the smugglers. It's a lawless place, right, between Colombia and Panama. And so there is so much death that goes on. I've seen estimates now by Michael Jan that it could be as high as 1 in 7 migrants die going through the Darien Gap or making the journey in that pipeline all the way from the Darien Gap up to the United States. But it seems pretty clear it's at least 10% are dying. And why is this happening, Sarah? That's the thing. Why is it happening? January 20th.
Right. You're right. January 20th, the Biden policies changed completely. But here you have, a moment where you as a lawmaker took it upon yourself to go to one of the most dangerous places. I mean, even if you had security with you, and I don't know if you did or not, maybe you did. And you can talk about that with me, but it's still a very dangerous place. And you saw the truth. You saw the humanitarian crisis straight in your face, the dangerous journey that people are making because of a message that is coming directly from the Biden administration that the border is wide open. And you know what? That message is accurate. Even if Kamala Harris, the vice president, goes to Central America and says, well, don't come, the policies themselves, Congressman, are turned over. They're turned over on their head.
Sarah, did you see what the people were saying in Guatemala to the message that they had people interviewed after what she said, and they just laughed at her. They're like, you're not serious, and we know you're not serious. There's one thing that has to be done. One thing has to be done at the very start here to turn this around. For every American, regardless of your political stripe, one thing needs to happen. You need to secure the southern border. Stop sending the message to migrants from around the world, hey, borders open, because that's what's happening. And that's what we heard from the people in Bajo Chiquito, is they said that we always see migrants coming through here, but not in the volumes that we're seeing now. It is the same thing we heard from the Border Patrol down in McAllen, Texas. Unprecedented. They said the same thing down in Panama. This is unprecedented.
That's it. I spend a lot of my time reporting from the U.S.-Mexico border. I was on the Rio Grande last week before I went to Guatemala, and I stood there late at night after midnight with 2 National Guards personnel, a female and a male, and the Border Patrol as well as Texas DPS. I was with them, and I watched as smugglers literally walked rafts across the river and swam across the river with rafts filled with people from all over Central and South America and literally handed them to our National Guard's personnel, and they were taken up on the banks and then processed by Border Patrol. I watched it. I said to the National Guardsmen, what's going on here? They said, this is what we're told to do. We are here not to do anything but make sure that the people who are coming across, they're not drowning, that they make it safely over to our shores. So the messaging is a lie. Vice President Kamala Harris, when she went to Guatemala and made that statement, do not come over, you will be turned back. That is a flat out lie. And you're right, people were saying that it was a joke, that they didn't believe her. I spoke with President Giammattei and I sat down with him and he said, look, it's the mixed messaging. Tell the truth and back that truth up with policy. I mean, even a president from the country of Guatemala, he understood that our policies were failing us. And he's telling the American administration, your policies are not only failing you, they are actually failing the entire region.
There's no doubt about it. Whether it's Mexico, Guatemala, and I believe there's leaders down in Panama, they understand how this is working, and it's doing great harm to them. And to a large extent, I mean, one of the takeaways that I had from this, Sarah, is that we Americans caused this problem. And regardless of what your political stripe is, we Americans caused this problem. And it happened on January 20th, after having control of our border, getting things in a much better position. It has been unleashed on Central America right now. After closing the Keystone Pipeline, what's the pipeline he opened, President Biden? He opened the pipeline from Panama up to our southern border, and people are just flowing in. And so while there's the whole humanitarian thing, Sarah, which should never be underestimated, children dying on the trail as a result of this message being sent by the Biden administration. Come on in, we've opened our borders. People dying as a result of that, in particular young people. The thing that is of the greatest concern to me is the national security implication.
Absolutely.
Because when you see people coming here from Somalia, you're coming from Iran, they're coming from places around the world, people coming from China. And this is a real concern for us, where it's easy to melt into the tens of thousands of people that are steadily coming up day after day and be able to come into our country as a free pass. And all people have to do is look back to 2015 with the mass migration that happened from the Middle East into Europe, and all the terrorist bombings and things like that happened after that. We're setting ourselves up to do the same thing in America.
Congressman, thank you for being so honest about that, because that's an absolute fact. And when you're down there, and I know you've experienced this as well as I have, and you've talked to Border Patrol agents, I hope you've talked to DEA and FBI and, CIA and everybody else who's working these international, transnational criminal organizations. But we know that when the people come in, most of them, for the most part, don't even carry identification. We only capture so many people. The ones that want to turn themselves in, okay, for the most part, we can guess they're migrants. They're coming here. They've been told that we're going to process them and then let them go. But what about all those other ones, like you said, that are getting away? Those gotaways, those that are coming in while our Border Patrol agents are busy processing, hundreds, thousands across the border at night. The drug cartels and the human traffickers are moving contraband and people that we should be concerned about into our country to melt in, just like you said, into the fabric of not only those that are being smuggled, but into the United States, the fabric of our nation. And we won't know about it until there's another Bataclan. We won't know about it until there's another, World Trade Center attack. And that is extraordinarily concerning. I want to play this and I want to get your take on it. This is Chuck Holton, who you were with. He's speaking to a Panamanian smuggler, and I'd like to get your response to this.
We've had quite a few bodies brought out of the jungle and buried in our cemetery here, but many of those who die in the jungle simply disappear because the animals eat them or whatever. Now, as the migrants are passing by, when they used to be helped on their way by the townspeople, that's prohibited because the sentiment has changed. Where before we were helping the migrants, now we're seen as bad guys because we're making it easier for them, which only encourages more to come. The government is heavily discouraging them now for various reasons. That doesn't stop them from coming, however. It only makes the crossing more dangerous.
That was pretty honest.
Yeah, first of all, great reporting by Chuck Holton.
Wow.
He was there with us, with Michael Yan, and these guys are just doing yeoman's work down there in Panama and Central America, covering this story. But doesn't that highlight what we just said, what I just said, Sarah, in regards to the message has been sent by America that come to America, and they're coming in the thousands. They're coming in droves up the pipeline, and they can't stop them in those countries as much as they try to. And I do not blame, for example, the Panamanians. What are they to do with this incredible crush of people that are coming through the Darien Gap? Are they supposed to just leave them in their country? They don't have the resources to do that. So what are they forced to do? They put them on buses and they take them up to Costa Rica. And it works that way at as a pipeline all the way up the system. First Panama, Costa Rica, Nicaragua. They continue to get pushed up the pipeline until they get to the United States. And every step of the way, they pay, and they pay the smugglers and others. And in the meantime, some of them die. Mm-hmm. All of them are paying a ransom to get into America. And we're hearing that many people end up as indentured servants when they get here to America, where they got to send money back to the smugglers, the cartels, the coyotes, and all the rest.
I mean, this is a policy, this Biden administration policy is a policy of death and child abuse, if you ask me, and human slavery. You can't say that you're concerned about migrants, that there shouldn't be these borders. The policy doesn't reflect that. The policy is saying, hey, guess what? We're leaving the border open. You happen to show up here. It doesn't matter if you came in legally. For those of you who spent years trying to get citizenship, like 13 years for some folks that I know, who did everything the right way, used their green card, applied, came back and forth to visit, and waited for that moment when they could become a U.S. citizen. Biden administration is just saying, we're going to leave it wide open. And guess what? We're not even going to help you do it the right way. We're just going to let drug smugglers, human traffickers, the worst monsters on earth. We're going to let you roll the dice, pay them, and get into our country. And now we're going to have a shadow citizenry that lives in the darkness in our nation, that is in fear for their life and living in slavery. I don't know how anyone in the right mind across the United States of America, I don't care if you're left, right, you're a Green Party member, you're an independent, you don't care about politics. I don't know how anybody, though, could say that that's okay.
One of the things that the Border Patrol emphasized when we were down at the Rio Grande is they said, in talking to some of the families, well, we want to come to America where especially our children to go there because they'll be safe. And this Border Patrol agent, who spoke very good Spanish, he said that he shared the stories with them. Do you think they'll be safer in Chicago? Do you think they'll be safer in Baltimore? And these people hadn't thought about that. Will you really be safer there, especially if you don't speak the language? And what if you end up being an outcast? Where do you end up? You end up in a gang. And so you get the worst outcome possible. It undermines our society. It undermines, this is all undermining the rule of law. And exactly what those people are coming to, their vision of what they're coming to in America, it ends up being undermined because they are not following the law. And when you don't follow the law, whether it's the riots in our cities across this country or the lawlessness that's going on in some of our cities, if you have more people that are going to come in here that are coming in illegally, have ill intentions for America, they're already members of gangs, and I'm not saying all are. In fact, not even most of them are, but there's some that are, and you really end up destabilizing our country. And we're seeing them come in the busloads. That's one thing. Down in the Rio Grande, I saw busload after busload. What you were seeing, like those migrant facilities that were set up. I don't know if you saw it, Sarah, but there was motor coach after motor coach that was leaving full with these people. The jet that I took out of McAllen, Texas, there were 200 seats on it 2 months ago. Half of them, about 100, were with migrants. Every one of them had a
yellow envelope.
Yep, they had their manila envelope with them, and it said Chicago, Philadelphia, Baltimore. That's where they were going. We saw the same thing down in Panama. They were loading them up, bus after bus, out of the migrant facility, and they were taking them up to Costa Rica on the next stop of the pipeline onto America.
Why do you think, Congressman, why do you think this is happening? Why do you think the Democrats who knew under President Obama, we've seen this in the past, President Obama, 2013, 2014, under DACA, we saw the flood of young, undocumented, unaccompanied minors coming into the United States. Over 67,000 came into the country at that time. Why did the Biden administration do this again? They knew the minute that they overturned those executive orders that were put in place by President Trump and the policies put in place by the Trump administration. You know, whether you like the Trump administration or not, those policies worked. They might not have been a permanent fixture, but they worked. Why did they turn him over?
Yeah, so it's no accident that they did that. I truly believe that when President Obama said, what was that, in 2008, early 2009, he said, I want to transform America. And he was not able to complete that mission in his 2 terms. You look at the people. Who's his chief domestic policy advisor? Susan Rice.
Right.
Who's still out in Washington, D.C.? First of all, President Obama has a home out here in Washington, D.C. yet. Valerie Jarrett is still there, right by his side. And this is the 3rd term for the Obama administration with Joe Biden as the titular head. And their goal is to transform America. And they view this as one of the ways in which they can do that. But there's going to be a terrible price to be paid for all Americans. And you know who's catching on to this, Sarah?
Who?
The Hispanic populations in Texas. Look at the election.
Great point. Absolutely.
In McAllen, Texas, this past week for mayor. Look at a couple of the other elections that are happening down in Texas. They are finding out.
And you're right, because McAllen, I want everyone to understand this, because most people don't know this. It's local news, but local information out of McAllen. But McAllen's like 85% Democrat, registered Democrat. And tell everyone who won. Who won in McAllen? Yeah. A Republican.
A Republican won. And so those people that came to America, and some of them came here illegally, I'm sure that was the case, but even they are now saying, hold it. This is going to undermine our way of life. It is going to undermine the reason we came to America. That's why you have to have a sane immigration system. We all believe in immigration. Almost all of us are products of immigration in one way or another, but it has to be done in a controlled fashion, and it has to be done so people can assimilate into society, because we are an exception in America. We are not the rule. I mean, so many Americans, Sarah, just fail to realize that we are the grandest experiment in the history of humankind. That's why we always talk about the founding. And I know even my daughters and others, they sometimes get tired of hearing about the founding, the founders and all the rest. But that was an extraordinary document that they put together, the Declaration, the Constitution, all these things. Right. Never been done before in the history of mankind. And that's what while they may not be thinking about it in those terms, that's how they're voting now, because they're seeing that rule of law, protection of private property rights, liberty and opportunity, they're seeing it undermined by having this invasion that's going on in our country.
I think you brought up a really great point, Congressman Tiffany. I think that, putting all Hispanics, all Latinos into one basket is the biggest mistake that the Democrats and anyone, even Republicans, can ever make. Right? You're missing the boat here. I mean, I'm half Cuban. I grew up with a Cuban mother, Cuban family. My dad was from Alabama, but he passed away when I was young. But they also influenced me. My dad was an amazing man. But I was surrounded by these amazing women from Cuba and my 2 uncles, poor guys that had to be around all their sisters. But these tough women who fought communism, who believed in this dream that they would call themselves, people would say, oh, you're Cuban. And my mom would say, no, I'm not Cuban. I'm an American. I'm an American citizen. Cuba, I left that behind. That is not my nation anymore. this is my nation. And I feel that there are so many other wonderful, amazing Latinos and Central Americans and Tejanos and, people in California, third generation, fourth generation Americans from maybe Spanish descent or Mexican descent or wherever, who have different mindset, who are saying, look, we're here to protect our country. This is our nation. And we want to protect all the people in it. And we don't want this. I was talking to a friend of mine from McAllen, and I'm just going to interject this quickly. And they wrote me, they said, hey, that's why I knew about the election. They said, hey, that report you did with a little boy that you interviewed by the Rio Grande where you put put him on the phone with his mother. This guy said, I had so many people calling me. Junior, I'll throw you out. He's going to be so happy I said his name again, Junior. He said there were so many people out here who saw that. And he said, I really believe that showing that side of things, brings the truth. Like you going to the Darien Gap brings the truth of what this really is, of the horrors of this journey, of the lie to the American people.
And you've really brought it full circle here, Sarah. Why did I go down there? Because I believe it's my duty. After having seen what's going on at the Rio Grande, I went to the Arizona border last year. By the way, it was the first trip I took after I won a special election, for your listeners that aren't familiar with me, a little over a year ago in May of 2020. And first trip I took was down to the Arizona border. I saw the wall being built. I heard from local law enforcement how the wall works and how they were getting control of the border. And of course, that's all thrown away, as I saw when I went down to the Rio Grande in April. But that's why I went down to Panama, is because I owe that to my constituents.
Right, Wisconsin, just so everybody remembers, this is Wisconsin. You grew up on a dairy farm in Elmwood, Wisconsin, and here you are going to the border, going overseas to Panama. And let me ask you this question. I ask everyone this, and I tell everyone this. The border does not just exist on the border. It isn't like those problems just stay in those states. They come throughout our nation, into Wisconsin, into Ohio. Drugs, people living in shadows, servitude, human trafficking, everything. I mean, there is not one state in our union that is not affected by this.
Every state is a border state at this point. That's what I saw flying out of McAllen, Texas, that nearly half the plane with migrants in it, all with those manila envelopes, Baltimore, Philadelphia, Chicago, going all over the United States. Every state's a border state. And you bring up a very good point. The drug flows are unbelievable right now. We're hearing from law enforcement, they've never seen anything like this. And just think of the great scourge. I mean, if no other reason, wouldn't you reverse course if you were the Biden administration just to stop those poisons from coming in? But then on top of it, I mean, we talked about the human carnage and misery down in the Darien Gap, where it could be as many as 1 in 10 people die trying to come through the Darien Gap to get in the pipeline, to get to America. You have all these people that are being trafficked through Mexico. You don't get into America, as you well know, Sarah, without paying a bounty, without paying the cartels, the smugglers, whoever is doing that, you've got to pay them. And it is just incredible, the human toll that this is taking. And you really can't even put it into words sometimes, Sarah, what a detestable thing is going on right now with this invasion of America.
It's devastating. It's devastating. I got to tell you, I felt the same way when I went up into a town called San Rafael a few days ago. I was up in the mountains in Guatemala, outside of Guatemala City, about 2 hours in this mining village. And I spoke to someone there who was very familiar with the trafficking that was taking place in Guatemala up to Mexico. And they said to me, somebody I knew was trafficked recently and they turned back. But everybody that goes through has to cross through Sinaloa territory in our area. And that's former Chapo Guzman's, territory, cartel area. And I said, well, how do they know if someone's in the group that doesn't belong there? He said, because basically him being a smuggler as well, I believe, a narco trafficker or a smuggler, we send the list to them. So they know when the people come through, who are the people that belong there and who the people aren't. And I said, well, what happens when people try to infiltrate or when they try to cross without paying? He goes, well, they get killed. That's what happens. He goes, they lose their lives. And he said, far worse than that, there are people that are literally taken. And this is coming from the person that I spoke with. There are people that are literally taken and they're used for organ harvesting because there's money in that too. These people are monsters. If anyone thinks any different, why perpetuate a policy that just emboldens them, puts money in their pocket, destroys our nation, threatens our national security? I mean, I don't know what the end game is for any administration, particularly the Biden administration, to perpetuate this kind of behavior, but it feels like they're playing with fire. And it feels like before, maybe one day we're going to wake up and we're going to have another attack in our country. Or one day we're going to wake up and we're going to realize that a good majority of our children are lost to addiction or, living in squalor. I don't know what it is that the plan is or what the messaging is. Before I let you go, I'd want to give you the final word. What do we do as citizens, sir? How do we actively participate in doing the right thing legally through the law and the right way to fight back against these kind of policies and to speak up and be heard?
We deliver this message. I mean, that's part of the reason I'm on your show, Sarah. And once again, I want to recognize the great work that Chuck Holton and Michael Yan are doing, as well as yourself going down to Guatemala. We have to continue to get the message out because it's slowly burning into the American people. While the mainstream media generally will not cover it, people do get some sources of news. Other than that, they know something is wrong and what is going on here. We need to continue to deliver that message. The people of McAllen, Texas are beginning to figure it out, right? And so we have to continue to deliver that message. But I can tell you, my office will not rest. We are already looking at the next actions we're going to take, and maybe we'll be able to talk about that soon in the next couple months when we take.
Can we get a hint?
The next things that next things that we want to do. Well, I can just tell you, this does not end for us because it truly is. While the Biden administration is all about transforming America, I'm about saving America. And this is one of the key things that we can do to help save America is to have a sane immigration system in America. And we're not going to rest. And we'll have more news in the months to come here as additional actions that we want to take that I think are creative and deliver the message for the American people. But more importantly, get us to policies that actually work for immigration, because this is one of the biggest failures of Congress over the last 2 decades, is not coming up with a sane immigration policy. We were poised. We were at such a good moment in time with President Trump as the president to be able to accomplish this, because he could have gotten this done, and he would have had so many people that follow him that, call them hardliners on immigration. They would have accepted the agreement if we could have gotten it done. A huge failure by Congress. And I'm hoping while I am having my tenure in Congress that we're going to fix this problem.
Oh, I certainly hope so. I mean, I think what you just said was so brilliant. You're right. We want to save America, but we also want to have a just and great policies that welcome immigration like we always have from the very beginning and the founding of our nation, but doing it the right way so that people can enjoy the great things our country has to offer, like liberty and freedom and justice. We don't want to lose that. I don't want to see that lost. I don't want, a crazy, broken system that fails in all aspects, and more importantly, fails these beautiful children, fails these wonderful people, and I believe our national security, probably most importantly, and the American people. Thank you so much, Congressman Tiffany. Will you come back on the show? Make me that promise, because I want to hear everything that you're planning. I may even call him like off the record and beg for this, everything that you're planning, because I want to be there to support it, and I want to be there to get it out there so that everyone can hear about it.
Sarah, I just say one final thing to your viewers,
sure.
And that is, I am not giving up on America. These are dark times for America in so many ways in this whole transformation to a socialist country. I I'm not giving up on America. I hope you won't either, because America is worth saving.
That's right. She is worth fighting for. This is the greatest nation on earth. And like you said, our founding fathers, they came up with a document that I believe is one of the most precious pieces of paper. The idea, the whole concept behind our nation is probably the most beautiful thing that has ever existed in humankind. That truly freedom is what we all are about. That is our God-given right. And that is what that's what we fight for, right? So thank you so much for being a part of the show, Congressman. I look forward to having you back on.
Me too. I look forward to it, Sarah.
The N-word, the worst word in the world. It's like the worst word. And nobody even likes to say that, right? The N-word. And now it's like a headline, but just among conservative news outlets for the most part. Why? Because President Biden's son, Hunter, who is a huge problem and constantly is doing terrible things, like was texting that to his white lawyer. I mean, think about what he was saying. I mean, you know what? It doesn't even surprise me, because it was President Biden who once eulogized a former KKK member. Remember that with Byrd when he was in the Senate? He eulogized him. These people that support President Biden and his family, that really do not pay attention to the truth of their own history, do not see what kind of racist history. I mean, my gosh, I think I went through it one time with you all on my podcast, and I wish I had that tape with me right now. But like all the racist things that Biden has said, he even made fun of people that worked at 7-Eleven, if you get my drift. But it didn't matter. You ain't black if you don't vote for me. Remember that too? And now we've got all these text messages with Hunter Biden using this horrific word, this horrible, horrific word, this racist word. Like I have never, and I can honestly, truthfully, going back in my mind through all of the files in my brain, I have never, no one in my family, we've never used that word, ever. It is a horrific, nasty, terrible thing. I don't even like listening to it when rappers put it in a song. I think it's horrible. But you don't see the media going after him, do you? You don't see the media jumping down President Biden's throat and screaming at him and calling him every name in the book and holding a hearing to throw him out of office. You know, this is the, cancel culture, right? I thought you were the cancel culture. Who's the cancel culture out there? The wokes. Who's all woke out there? What, you just ignore what you don't want? You don't want to face the reality, can't admit when you're wrong? These people are just terrible. And I actually really do, a part of me does feel really sorry for the Biden family, because they remind me of like a Shakespearean, a Shakespearean play of tragedy, right? I mean, here you got a son smoking crack, like snorting coke off of prostitutes and living this horrific life, can never measure up to his father, and remember, that was what they tried to do with Trump, with President Trump. All of his children, I mean, they're amazing. Eric and Donald, they're not perfect. No kids are. My kids are not perfect. No kids are. They all love their father. They do. Ivanka, Donald, Eric, they love their dad. They love each other. They're a great family. They're a good family. They work together. They're not perfect, but they work together and they care about their family and they speak highly of their family. And you won't see this kind of behavior, but they were destroyed in the media. Every time the I don't even want to say it, but mainstream media, I'm going to say it, mainstream media, New York Times, Washington Post, MSNBC, which is not so mainstream, and all of them, they were terrible to him. Listen, though, to President Biden describe Hunter. I mean, the last thing this may be the reason why Hunter is the way he is. Maybe no one's ever held him accountable. It's like the elephant walking in the room and nobody's calling it out. It's like knocking over everything in the house. It's destroying stuff. It's crapping all over everything. And you're like, just walking around, getting a glass of water, eating dinner. You're pretending like the elephant isn't there. I feel like Hunter Biden is the elephant in the room, because listen to how President Biden describes his son.
Had my son Hunter is the smartest guy I know.
Play it again.
Had my son Hunter is the smartest guy I know.
No, that's not true. That's just not true. He is not the smartest guy, you know. You may be telling him that. You know, it's like when you watch those shows like America's Got Talent or whatever, and the parents are telling their kids, like, you are the most amazing singer in the world. And then they come out and sing, and you're just like, oh my gosh, that parent is either blind or they are lying to their child, or they really can't hear him. And that's not fair, because now the kid goes out there thinking they're the most amazing thing on planet Earth. And everybody's like, okay, they dong them, they get them off the stage, it's over. It's like a reality check, right? A big shock to the system. So no, President Biden, Hunter Biden, maybe your opinion that he is the smartest guy you know. And that's kind of sad. But what he really needs is your love and honesty and tough love. He really needs like some super tough love, because he has not aged past 16, even if he's in his 50s. He is an addict. He is still living like a teenager. It's sad. It's horrible. Addiction is terrible. So many families are suffering through this. And, you know, maybe if President Biden actually did the right thing and just called his son out for this behavior and just tried to really help him, maybe there would be a difference in Hunter Biden's life. Although I have no idea. I'm not a therapist. I'm just throwing it out there as a mom to a dad. That might actually help his son just come to grips with reality, which is what we all need to do. So thank you so much for being a part of the Sara Carter Show. You're the reason that this show is so important to me. I'm so grateful that I could have Congressman Tom Tiffany on with us. It meant so much to have him on the show. And remember, go to saraacarter.com. That's saraacarter.com, where you'll be able to connect to all of our social media, as well as all of the stories. And you can sign up for our email. And please, 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 go ahead, download the show on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you get your podcasts, and leave a review. I read them all the time. I love to hear your ideas. And there's always so many more stories to talk about, so much more to do. And I'm so happy that you're with me on this journey. Thanks again, and God bless. Today, I'm joined by Rebecca Weber, the CEO of the Association for Mature American Citizens, also known as AMAC. For the upcoming year, what are some of the biggest topics of advocacy for members?
As an organization that represents Americans 50 and over, we recognize that Social Security is such an important component to seniors' income. And so we also recognize that for someone my age, for example, Social Security, I may not see my entire benefit unless something is done soon. So we promise to fight to keep Social Security solvent. We've got what's called the AMAC Social Security Guarantee. Information is found on our website. We're also pushing for transparency in healthcare. We want to eliminate surprise billing. Sara, another great proposal that we have out there, which has got over 22 co-sponsors now, is AMAC's pro bono healthcare bill, which essentially allows doctors to take a healthcare deduction and provide doctor services to individuals that are currently on Medicaid. We project that it could save billions of dollars in Medicaid, but also it provides for those lower income folks to have and build a real doctor-patient relationship.
Rebecca, thanks so much for being with me today. I'm honored to have you and AMAC as a sponsor for the Sara Carter Show. For more information, folks, visit amac.us/Carter.